Um, what I'd like to do first, as we are getting ready to start just our conversation, is one, I want to thank you again just for taking this time to come and have a conversation about health and wellness regarding the body, right? But really today, I would love if we could talk about how one, you kind of got into this field, but then two, I want to talk about how you feel about health and wellness for our community, because I think that there is a very large gap.
Yes.
I've been in the industry for a little bit, close to 20 years now, and I can tell you, majority of my clients have not been people of color. And I can, if I'm honest with you, it's very difficult. All right. If I'm transparent, it makes me scratch my head because I got into the industry because of a few things. I got into the industry because I got cut from arena football, and it led me this direction. But during that process, my father was put on dialysis. If you're familiar with that, so we've had my mother's had a brain aneurysm. There's a
Mhm.
lot of things that transpired, right? And so health is something that's very important to me. I was also overweight as a young kid. I got bullied as a young kid, and I was even overweight, and I dealt with depression, anxiety, and things like that as an adult. And I went to food, right? And so for me to be on this side of it now, um, I want to help as many people as I can, but I know that not everyone can relate to my story. And
Right.
so I know that you're very passionate about what you're doing, and there's not a lot of people that look like you that are chiropractors. And so
True.
when I tell people about my love for your field, they're like, dude, you're weird, especially if they're people of color, right? And
Right.
so I've had a relationship with chiropractors since 2003. I was first introduced into the field through my best friend. His doctor, his sister was a chiropractor. And so I've maintained a relationship and maintenance because I believe that there's something that we're missing and there's a misconception out there. And so today, what I would like to do is tackle a couple things because I think that there's miseducation, there's a lack of clarity. There's also been some misrepresentation in the years before that has caused this, just like with the vaccine. A lot of
Mhm.
people of color don't want it because of the things that have happened in the past. So I would
Right.
really love it if you would just be as transparent as possible, because I believe that this may be a introduction to many conversations, but it's going to be beneficial to our families, generations to come, if we start having this conversation about one. I think that, and I would love, like my daughter, she's all about, you know, doctors and stuff like that. And I think that we need more young people seeing people of color in the field, not just your common fields, but the fields that are not as common, to know that,
Right.
hey, there's more ways to help people. You don't just have to be, a trauma surgeon. You don't just have to be a general practitioner. There's other things out there. And I love what you're doing. I love that even with your business, you were very bold about your faith, and a lot of people feel like, okay, I can't do that, but you don't do that. And so I just love for you to kind of just tell us one, about your practice, how you got into it, and what drew you to this particular field.
Okay. So, of course, I'm a chiropractor. I graduated in 2016, and the name of my practice is Golden Alignment Sports and Wellness. Big emphasis on wellness more than sports because you can't get one without the other. So that's my niche in itself, and I focus on wellness more than even talking about the common misnomers that we know as our population, where most African Americans feel the only time you go to a chiropractor is if you're in a car wreck. I don't even do PI care, which is personal injury. And so it's misfortunate that a lot of our people only think of chiropractors when they think about car wrecks. And there's a whole nother world to it, which is the wellness population and sports population. And that's what I focus on at my practice. I became a chiropractor for several reasons. There's a short and a long answer, but we'll go with the short version. I initially was going to medical school to be a heart surgeon. During my senior year of college, I had an older brother, which is no longer with us. He was murdered.
Mm,
And
I'm sorry.
a day before he was murdered, we had a conversation about my career. path why I was choosing to become a cardiologist. And he asked if it was simply something that I wanted to do, or if it was because I thought it would make the hood proud. Is kind of what we laughed about sitting on the porch. Because growing up all my life, living in, a lower economic area, people always talked about how smart I was. And I was going to be the one that made it out the hood, And so we had a tough conversation. Then the next day I lost him, and I ended up taking a break from medical school. And during that break, I decided to get a master's in public health. And getting my master's in public health, one of the first classes that I took was Introduction to Public Health. And they talked about complementary alternative medicine. And it opened up a whole nother world, because we didn't know anything else besides invasive procedures. Like, if you had high blood pressure, or if you had heart disease, or if you had diabetes, medicine, and finding out that there was a way to help people through non-invasive procedures and approach was like literally mind-bending. And it kind of opened up a whole nother world to me, because the people that I saw suffering the most was my own people.
Yes.
And so I quickly did a 360 and decided to get my master's in public health, and then head here to Dallas, Texas, where I started chiropractic school in January of 2013, and I graduated in August of 2016. And for the past 4 years, I've been working in a hospital in the OR setting, where I'm a neurophysiologist. So I also have a diploma in neurology. And so I did that to kind of kill some of the debt that I've incurred. That's another conversation about what it takes to get people of our, color to even get to that point, and how much debt it takes, because we aren't born with a silver spoon in our mouth, And so from that point, I worked in an OR, and the normal terms is that you have to be a doctor or work under someone for at least 10 to 15 years before you open a practice. But God was tugging, like I have something for you. And I was just like, no, I don't want to. The scariest part was him telling me to open a practice in the middle of a pandemic. And I was like, is that you, God? And he was, telling me. And our spiritual parents, Pastor Evan and Sarah, talked to them about it and kind of told them that I was terrified. And I just needed to know that I was in his will. And if I was in his will, I knew that I would be okay.
Yeah.
And, that leads me to something else. If you ever go inside of Golden Alignment, everything is literally built on the foundation of God. Without him, we are nothing. And I think that it's a true statement that if you're afraid of me before your friends, I'll be afraid of you before my Father. And that's paraphrasing, what Jesus said. Yeah. And so I have no problem declaring who, my Father is and who's my provider. And although times have been hard and it's been unfortunate for a lot of people during the pandemic, and even during the snowstorm that we just, went through, I've never lacked, and Golden Alignment has never lacked. And we've also been flowing abundantly so that we could be a blessing to others. And that's even bigger, because not only did we not go without, we also had more than enough to, go over. And I'll tell a quick story. Maybe a couple weeks ago, we started the year over. We were starting 2021. Books are looking bare. And I was walking out the practice, and I was like, this is crazy. I have no one on the books, right? We're talking about a chiropractor that opened a practice and started treating like, professional athletes from day one. It was crazy. And I was walking out the practice, and I was so discouraged. And I turned back around, and I opened the door of that practice, and I stood in that lobby, and I looked at the Golden Alignment sign, and I said, God, you told me to open this practice. So I'm standing on your word. Your word can't return back to you, boy, because it would make you a liar. Amen. So I need you to fill these books. And I promise you, Sly, I woke up the next morning, and I had 9 bookings between midnight to that morning. And so, it's a true testament of our faith and how God is, the end all be all. He's the beginning, the end. He's our everything. And he just truly wants to know that we trust him. And that can be applied in so many areas of our life, And so that's the foundation of Golden Alignment. That's the foundation of Dr. Tiffany Hall and anything and everything that I touch.
That's amazing. I got to touch on a few points before we move forward. So you mentioned our spiritual parents, Pastor Evan and Pastor Sarah. They're amazing. And we have similar situations. I started, I started my own business in the middle of the pandemic. you know. 2020 was wild, but again, I went to them with it and I was like, hey, this is kind of what God has put on my heart, you know. And same thing, it has just been amazing, and it's just, and it's awesome to be able to connect with people that get it, right?
Yes.
And so shout out to them. And I do want to, I want to confirm something. So do you go by Dr. Tip? You go by Tip,
So
like,
I have several names.
and that's why I asked that, because I do
The
too, because
ones
I'm
I'm
like, okay.
that the ones I'm so commonly referred to is either Dr. Tip or Dr. Trap, which is a whole nother story where Dr. Trap has come from. Yes. But DFW Metroplex knows Dr. Tiffany Hall as Dr. Tip or Dr. Trap.
Okay,
So,
Dr. Tip.
and
We're gonna go with Dr. Tip. Okay.
yeah,
All
we
right.
like Dr. Tip. But I do want to touch on something before we go further. Um, Pastor Evan and Pastor Sarah also, Pastor Sarah sent her anointing because she was unable to make it, but Pastor Evan came and anointed. When I say every crevice of golden alignment, I mean, he literally had. And he also gave me some holy oil. And I have a patient right now that literally has been going through night terrors and suffering. And I mean, this is how deep chiropractic goes. Like, we're not just talking about adjusting and aligning someone's body physically. We're talking about aligning them spiritually and aligning them
Yes.
mentally and emotionally. And I took this oil that Pastor Eben had so graciously blessed me with, and we've been praying and praying over her, and she's now
Mm,
able to sleep. She had not been sleeping. And so when I tell you that Pastor Eben and Pastor Sarah are truly anointed, which I know you know, but for anyone that may hear this interview, I need them to understand the magnitude of being covered under the right family, being aligned under
yes.
the right
Yes.
leaders, because if you're aligned under the right leaders, it takes you so far. Like, their grace and mercy that they have on their lives has been passed down to their spiritual daughter.
Yes.
And when I touch those patients, and Pastor Evans said it, this chiropractic table is anointed. When they lay on this table, they will be healed. He anointed my hands. Tiffany, your hands
Yes.
will be anointed. They will be holy, and so this is
Yes.
a real thing, to talk about how amazing our spiritual parents are.
And
So,
I'm glad that you expounded upon that, because I think that especially people from our community needs to hear that, right? Like, they going in, I know that there's this misconception of um, chiropractors are quacky. They are just
mhm,
trying to get my money.
yes,
Now, let me just be transparent. There's going to be bad people out there in every industry.
in every field.
Every industry. Chiropractors are not just for rich people. We have to stop thinking that.
Yes.
Like, it just like for health and wellness, I have been like, over the last 20 years, Doc, I'm like, why is it that we are still in the same mentality like the Israelites? I won't open up that can, right?
Yes, yes.
Why are we still
Sure.
there? Like, in order for us, there are some things that we have to tap into so that we can break these chains. And I just did a little plug there, because I'm actually working on, a
Yes.
YouTube channel called Breaking Chains, and it's more about the mental part. And I'm glad you touched on that, because I am big on mental health, right? And I believe our community, especially Black men, do not want to
Mhm.
address mental health. And I can tell you, I've dealt with anxiety, I've dealt with depression, I've been down those roads, and I've fought those battles. And a lot of times I didn't know what battle it was.
Mhm.
And so I'm very grateful that you are humble enough, and that you have chosen to just really sacrifice your will to allow God's will to be
Mhm.
present in your practice, because that's what we need. Like, I want people to know that, hey, there is someone that is in the Metroplex, or even if they're traveling from out of town, that they can go and they can trust that when the hands touch them, that they're in a safe place. Um,
Yes.
I have been in a position where I've had the opportunity to train a lot of professional athletes over the last 20 years, and I haven't always felt comfortable sending them anywhere. Right? At
Mhm.
one point in time, I had a guy fly in from Boston to work on a player, just because I didn't
Yeah.
have a connection. Right? I finally was able to connect to somebody locally, but I really want us to really talk about a few things. And so, let's. What is your being in this field, right? And for those that are watching, these questions are coming. Some of them are kind of raw, because I don't want her to know and have time to really think through it. I want a very authentic response. But these are just questions that have always been on my heart for our, and it's not just our community, right? This is kind
Right.
of it's probably geared and it's going to help our community a lot, but it's just a question that I wanted your perspective on, because you're in the field. We're both kind of in the same field, health and wellness, but you have a different side of it, right?
Mhm.
We're trying to get to the same exact place, but you're just on a different side of it. And so, what is something that you would like to maybe give as far as wisdom to our people in our community in regards to why it's important that we take care of our bodies and our minds?
I think the biggest thing that I keep like nailing into a coffin for a lot of people is understanding that coding a symptom isn't going to solve the problem. I
Say that
think that
again. Wait,
uh,
go back. Say that one more time, because I want whoever to hear this. They may not hit rewind, but say that again.
coating the symptom will not solve the problem. So basically placing a band-aid on, the wound, but never literally getting to what caused that wound to start won't solve the problem.
Give me an example. Give me an example.
So
Without
prime
giving
example.
names. Don't give names. Let's keep, like client
Yeah, for
names. We'll keep
sure.
that out of it.
HIPAA.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I think, and this is not even just specific to individual people. I think that this is something that's going on majorly throughout the world, is us talking about something so simple as I have a fever. Let's go there. I have a fever. So I'm going to take Tylenol.
Mm,
The body is just like a car. Whenever the car overheats, what happens? The light comes on. It tells us that something is wrong. That doesn't mean go fix, like, oh, I'm gonna just put a little bit of water in and try to get it to cool off really fast instead of figuring
mm.
out what caused the car to overheat. We have that really bad as a human population. I mean, we can go from something as simple as I have a fever, taking Tylenol, to I'm overweight because of something deeper. You're not overweight because of your hormones or the thyroid gland not working. You're overweight because you're struggling and dealing with depression, so you're overeating. So instead of you doing the work to figure out what is going on emotionally or mentally, you have a surgery. You put a
Mm.
band-aid on something that's bigger. So now you just coded the symptom, because the symptom is your body's way of telling you help, help. It's the check engine light going
Yeah,
off
yeah.
for your car that something is wrong. So you can go have as many surgeries as you want to have and never work out and never eat right, but the problem is still there. And so we see oftentimes, even with African American women, they want to have the surgeries. They want to do the instant gratification thing instead of having the real surgery. And the real surgery is digging deep to
Mm,
figure out what's causing you to not care about your temple so much that you're willing to do the work. And
mm.
so that's the biggest thing that I see throughout the world, but definitely in America, is that we're often looking for something to cover up the symptoms. We're looking for a band-aid versus doing the work to figure out what's causing the high blood pressure, what's causing the heart disease, what's causing the diabetes, what's causing the overweightness. And that's a huge thing. So
Wow. So, do you think that this has become a generational thing? Do you think that we've kind of passed down this thought process generationally? Like we've just kind of picked up that band-aid mentality or
um,
perspective, and we've kind of passed that down. Is that something that you think is that something that can be broken? I mean, how
I
do I
mean,
go if I was
are we
coming to
talking
you?
from are we talking from a worldly perspective, or are we talking from a spiritual perspective? Because we know about those generational curses, right?
I know. So let me ask this: if I
Okay.
came to you and I said, "Hey, I'm feeling, some pain," and you were to give me maybe that analogy, what would be my next step?
So the next
How would you
step,
approach that?
so I'm very candid and very honest with my patients when I tell them that just as well as you can fire a doctor, I fire patients.
Ooh.
And so what that means is I don't give you a quick and easy, resolution. You are coming here to me because you want to be out of pain. That's your goal. My goal is to get you healed holistically from every angle, 360 degrees, like making a full circle and back around. And so what that looks like is we're literally going to tap into every part of your life. We're going to tap into the things that are deeper that you can't realize that's causing the pain.
Okay,
The pain is just
stop, because I want people to know this. I've been doing what I do for a long time. This is the reason why I wanted to connect with her, because she does not just go looking to fix the symptom. She's going after the root. Right. And so often this is you probably agree. This is why in your field, people don't get the credit, because a lot of time there's a lot of doctors out there just trying to fix the symptom, and they don't go after the root. The good ones go after the root. So I didn't mean it. I want to make sure I'm plugging you right now. So I'm just saying, look, when y'all see this, understand that she's going after the root. She's going to approach it from a holistic everything, not just trying to tap into one. So I just wanted to put that out there as a little plug. That's why I need to go ahead and go follow her page. We'll give all that at the end. So go ahead and finish that.
I mean, and that's it. That's the biggest thing is if you're not willing to do the work, then I'm not the doctor for you. And I tell people that, I mean, and even when I tell them that, when I start to partner them with, I'll maybe like, okay, we need a nutritionist. We need a physical therapist. We need you to have a trainer, a coach. Like, this is literally a holistic thing. We're going to talk about things that you don't want to talk about. I have a patient right now that literally we're working on. He doesn't believe in God, and that is perfectly fine. By the time he leaves, he will, but I don't push God onto anyone. So the principle is the same, whether you believe it from an earthly principle or you believe it from a spiritual principle. I tell them, okay, well, let's talk about mindfulness. If you don't believe in God and you don't believe in anything higher, let's talk about mindfulness and where you are when you're in yourself and you're having all these issues, because pain is it's not just a physical thing,
That's good.
And so that's huge for me is to make sure that they understand if they're not willing to do the work. And that's what I tell them when they're like, okay, well, doc, I just want to feel good. I want to be out of pain. And I tell them that's your goal. So we have patient goals and we have doctor goals, and Dr. Tip's goal for you is to be okay. As much as I love the money, I tell people this all day, every day. If you do right by people, the money will come.
Always.
Golden alignment has not lacked at all. It's unfortunate that we get people healed and healthy so soon, because of course they turn over and leave. And then we talked about, something that you spoke on earlier, maintenance. And what does that look like? So a lot of people, they reach their goals and then they leave. And I tell people that's not how it works. The same thing with working out. That's not how it works. You don't come to you and say, hey, Sly, I want to be 150 pounds. And then once I hit 150 pounds, I leave. What does that look like? And so then I'm back in a couple months because I've fallen off the wagon, because that's not how it works. Maintenance is a real thing too, so we touch on those things.
So good. That's so good, man. That's so good. Oh, you hitting on so much. I was not ready for this today. I thought we was just going to just dive in a little bit, but you're unlayering so much. So let's go back to that maintenance part real quick, and I'm gonna rewind to another part. But you mentioned the maintenance. Yes, it is so critical, because I didn't know the importance of maintenance when I first started going to a chiropractor. Like, I did not know. I didn't even understand alignment in the body, and we're talking about mentally, physically, and spiritually. Like, I didn't get it. And my best friend's sister was trying to sow these seeds. So I'm gonna rewind before I go further. Not everyone is going to be ready. So when y'all hear this, she's not saying she's just firing people. I've fired clients before.
Right.
And I the firing can sound like a bad word, but sometimes people are just not ready to make the decisions that need to take place. And that is like, sometimes we're just not ready. Sometimes you may be ready to make one move, but you're not ready to make another. And as professionals, we have a responsibility to be responsible. And we can't just be taking your money knowing that you're not ready, right?
And you're not going to get better.
I didn't know that, Doc. I didn't know that early in my career. Like, I was just like, people weren't ready, and I was like just working with them early on. And then one of my mentors was like, hey, it's okay to let go of clients, to fire them.
Yes.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? I need money. And he was like, yes, but the money will come when people see that you have the integrity. And so I was like, okay, got it. And so not everyone's ready. Sometimes people need to come when they've hit, I don't even like to use the word rock bottom, but at sometimes when they're empty, let me use that. When
Hmm.
they're empty
When they're
and they're
tired.
and they're ready to hear it and receive it and make change, that's when they're ready. And I've seen people in both of those phases where they've come to me, they weren't ready. We've had to kind of like part ways, let them kind of, figure out some things, and then they come back and I'm like, all right, now you're ready. Okay.
Yes.
So it's okay to, to have the parting ways of a business relationship. And so the other thing that I want to go back to real quick is the maintenance, because I believe that if we can really understand the purpose of maintenance, Doc, we will not have to go back and start over so much. The
Hmm.
reason why so many people, after they do the quick fix, because you can't maintain a quick fix. I'm just going to say that, number one, you cannot maintain a quick fix.
Right.
There's nothing to maintain, right? But once we start to see the progress, not perfection, but once we start to see the progress and what we're learning and the habits that we're making, maintaining is going to be a lot easier, right? Instead of just getting there and then stopping, like you said, because I've seen it happen so many times. Someone reach a goal and then they just stop and they're like, oh, well, I'm good. Well, what
Right.
happens is they're not really good because they didn't take the time to learn how they got there. They didn't take any of that. And now they're having to start all the way over. And potentially when they start over, it's a lot harder the second time than it was
Right.
the first time. Have you
Yeah.
experienced that before?
I've experienced it with patients, and I've also experienced it personally. I have.
Okay.
I've seen it happen several times. Like you, had experienced overeating with depression. I've experienced undereating. At my lowest, when I lost my brother, I was 88 pounds, so I underate.
Mm.
And at my worst times, I was 220 pounds, a size 18. And so I've seen that yo-yoing back and forth, where every time you start over, it's harder. I mean, we also have to keep in mind that the body is a real thing too. And so the body finds it harder to realize, like, oh, it's okay to take this fat off. Like, no, you like this fat. Like, it's trying to figure out what to do with it back and forth. And so that's a real thing. So it's always easier to start a plan, stick with a plan, and then maintain,
Yeah.
versus starting a plan, stopping a plan, stopping a plan, stopping a plan, start yo-yo up and down. It's just, I mean, all over the place. The body doesn't do well with it. And so maintenance is a real thing, whether it's from a, working out perspective or eating well perspective, or even getting a line perspective. I emphasize so many times with patients that what I don't need to happen is I get you better and then you go missing. And then
Mm.
you come back only when you're in pain, because now we have to fight against your body's mentality to think that the only time it's supposed to get better is when it sees me. We're trying to get you into a place where you're always in a state of euphoria. You're always okay. And you're literally just coming to get adjusted once a month versus how you were before, 2 and 3 times a week. And you don't want to return back to that place. And so
That's
maintenance
good.
is a real thing.
So to elaborate on that, this is where I know you mentioned this earlier that you spent some time working with the neurological side. The brain is big to me. Like the brain, I
Mhm.
think we have a misconception of how much our minds do,
Yes.
how the chemical reactor, like I don't think it's talked about enough, right? I'm starting to think that they need to start talking about this stuff like deeper in earlier ages of life, middle school,
Yes.
like how our brains connect to certain things, like you mentioned, cycles that we go through of stopping, starting, repeat. Like we're creating things when we do that. Like we don't really know, certain things that we watch, music that we listen to. Like there's so many different things that take place when it comes to alignment of the body. How much does the brain have to do with the body when it comes to alignment? Like, I mean, you kind of dabbed into it a little bit, but how much do I need to know about that when I'm leaving you and I just got adjusted? Maybe let's just say I'm having sciatica
Hmm.
stuff going on, right? And I have a desk job and I sit, and the desk job is very stressful. I have excess cortisol being released. I probably shouldn't have said that because some people won't know what I'm talking about, but
We'll touch on it.
okay, yeah, I'll
Yeah,
say,
we'll
yeah.
give a crash
So
course on what excessive cortisol.
yeah, okay, so let's go with that. And then maybe I'm taking medication
Hmm.
because my blood pressure has been out of control, and my blood pressure's been out of control maybe because we think it's stress, maybe
Mm-hmm.
what we diagnosed it as.
Yes, 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 yes.
Could potentially be food. It could be a lot of things. But how
Right.
does the mind, if I'm coming to you and you're like, hey, yeah, we just did this adjustment and I need you to go home and do X, Y, Z, right? Because a lot of times we don't get that homework and then we don't do it. Or either we don't
Mhm.
get it or we get it and we don't do it. And we don't understand what is taking place. And I guess I want to use the word damage, but I think that it's not, it may not be damage, but by not doing what you're asking me to do, what is that leading to? And I use sciatica because that is probably the most common thing I think people that are especially going through this pandemic are dealing with because of the
Yeah, from
excessive
city.
sitting. And then
Yeah.
it's like stress. Like some people are working a lot, and they're seated. I'm doing more sitting and I'm noticing things that I'm having to go and stretch and foam roll, use the hypervolt
Mhm.
that I didn't used to have to do when I was walking a lot. So talk to me about this cortisol and this sciatica and homework and like how do I even go about it? This sounds like a lot. I'm overwhelmed. This is the reason
Right, right,
why our people don't go to the doctor anyway. We leave
right, for sure.
confused.
Okay. So let's crash course what cortisol does in the body, where it's coming from and how it affects us, right? So whenever the cortisol is a hormone that's released from the body, and when it's released from the brain, literally it's coming from the medulla and it's telling you that you're stressed. And you can only stay in a heightened state, what we like to call fight or flight, where the sympathetics are firing, and a short amount of time before the body literally shuts down. We have some people that are literally walking around right now and they've been in a sympathetic state for months. I mean, and when we talk about a sympathetic state with cortisol levels being high, that's supposed to be a literally short-term thing so that you can fight or flight. If something happens, a bear is chasing you, a dog is chasing you, you're supposed to release cortisol so that you can move, adrenaline is pushing. And so that is something definitely to be talked about, because we literally just talked about the Band-Aid method, right? Covering up symptoms. So now you just told me that you are patient A. Patient A is coming in with high cortisol levels that he may not be aware of. He's having sciatica. He's also taking blood pressure medicine because his blood pressure is elevated. But who's to say that his blood pressure isn't elevated because of the cortisol levels? But cortisol levels are high because he's stressed, which is maybe a physical component, but most likely it's an emotional or mental component. Sciatica comes from the sciatic nerve being trapped. Where do nerves start? Where do they stop? How does
Mm,
that work? So we're literally talking about, once again, top to bottom, which is what I like to call it in my practice. We can't heal you in just one spot. We can't just align the physical body in one spot. We literally have to go in, figure out where the sciatic nerve starts and how that, mentally comes together with the physical part of the body and what that looks like. And so we start in baby steps. We literally, Dr.
that's
Tip
good.
calls the patients and say, hey, Sly, so what's going on? You over there stretching? Hey, Sly, you got something you want to talk about during the week? Hey, Sly,
Mm,
how are things going with you and your wife? Hey, Sly, how is it going with being a dad? Hey, Sly, how is it going with Black Lives Matter and you being a Black male in 2021,
that's good.
being afraid to get pulled over by a cop? I mean, it's so many different things that can literally cause you to be stressed out, and it not just be the sciatic nerve is flaring up because you're sitting down on, your glute max and it's closed off and you're feeling the shooting pain. It's
Mm,
bigger than that,
that's good.
because you can physically try to fix the body all day long, but if the mind isn't there, the body won't go. Where the
Mm,
mind won't allow you to go, the body won't go.
that's
A lot
good.
of times in the gym, I personally have experienced when my body was trying to fatigue, when I told my mind that I could do more, the body could push past that point of fatigue because it's not a real fatigue. And so it's important for us to understand that if your mind is not there, the 20% is needed from the body. 80% is needed from the mind. You have to already
Mm,
have arrived to that stage. We talk about the behavior health model, where the first step is admitting that there's an issue. And so think about that. We're talking about change starting from the thought process, not change starting from the action process.
that's good.
So that's huge, to think about that. A lot of change has to come literally from the thought process. You can come get adjusted and aligned all day long. But if you haven't arrived at the conclusion that you can be healthy or that you can be whole, Dr. Tip can adjust you all day long and you will go home and come back in the same way that you left, you
Oh,
know?
that's so good. That's so good. That's so good. So what you're telling me is that we can't address what we don't assess, and we can't assess what we don't acknowledge.
That's it. That's literally it.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow. And the mind is, I didn't know. I'm telling you, I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've really gotten to the studying of the brain and how the brain works probably about 10 years ago. And I've just slowly, just because it's a lot. So I've been slowly just chewing away at it. And ever since the pandemic, I've dove deeper.
Mhm.
And just because everything slowed down. And so it just like opened up things for me. I was able to see everything from, social media to, TV to what things I experienced, like you said, Black Lives Matters, and like there's some things I just had to get answers to. And so
Right.
the reason I asked it about the mind is because there's something. I wear a whoop. I don't know if you're familiar with the whoop, but there's something that I've been looking at, and I think it's pretty amazing, and you can probably dive deeper into this, how our bodies respond to recovery. Like
Mhm.
you said, the fight or flight, is all connected to the mind, and sleep, everything from sleep. And so I kind of want to get your thought process on that, because I've heard these terms, and you probably have as well. Oh, well, I have slept for 4 hours all my life, and so um, I'm okay. I don't need more
Mhm.
sleep. Or all right, so I slept for 8 hours, and I always wake up feeling the same way, like I'm sluggish. So it's just who I am, right? And so we get into these. I get I've gotten those comments. I don't know if you've had those before, but I'm big into sleep now, and how the quality of the REM sleep, the deep sleep,
Yes.
like it gets like I've noticed. I know without even looking at my data, because my Whoop captures my data. And for those watching, Whoop is basically just a fancy device that has been put out on the market that measures heart rate variability, all these different types of things. I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to the body, right? And so I had to have one. I was like, okay, it's measuring that. Let's check this out. But I'm telling you, Dr. Tip, my sleep is something I geek over. Never thought that I would ever be as, concerned, but everything that I do starts with how my mind gets reset and restored every night. My
Yeah.
workout gets moved, it gets changed. How I eat has been now changed based on the foundation of my mind.
Mhm.
How important is it that we get sleep, and the quality of sleep? Like, what is something you would tell a patient? I'm going to use pro athletes now, because I know that's your field, but I
Mhm.
think it applies to everybody. So I've been playing pro ball. I've retired, but I've been in this structured schedule
Mhm.
where everything was pretty much the same. Now I'm not playing. I'm having a hard time sleeping, because the thing that I played since I was 5, I no longer do. I'm trying to I'm trying to figure out who I am, or trying to figure out, like, what do I do now with life? I got a family. I used to spend most of my year away from the family. Now I'm home, and I have to be a husband. I have to be a father. I started a business to try to make sure I take care of my money the right way, but I'm not quite sleeping.
Mhm.
And I feel like I have to live off of energy drinks, or I don't know, like, so my mind can never shut down. Talk to me. Like, what would be if I came to you and, like, man, my body just does, I can't work out the way I used to. My body just ain't recovering the way it used to, doc. I
Yeah.
feel I,
So
I, I feel good. I mean, I think I feel good, but doc, I
yeah,
just don't recover.
the biggest thing is that I've told a lot of people is the body doesn't know what it needs until you give it what it needs, if that makes sense.
Mm, go ahead. I'll say it
It, it,
again. They didn't hear it. I know ain't
so
nobody
you know
listening right now, but when y'all hear this, this
yeah,
is probably the most, like, if y'all don't get anything out of this conversation,
the
please write
body
this
does
down.
not know. The body truly does not know what it needs until you give it what it needs. I mean, we're literally talking about something as simple as, and I'm sure maybe you do it, Sly, but a lot of people self-adjust. Have you ever seen someone like turning their neck or they're like moving their body and they're like, but I do it. And I'm like, okay, so let's show you how this works. This is the spine. A straight spine looks like this. A turned spine that's out of whack looks like this. Somebody that's self-adjusting, constantly turning their neck, they're pushing it further into subluxation, right? I mean, that works with every aspect of the human body, right?
So let me give an example. So you're meaning if I were to go and do like this, I'm like, ugh, and trying to,
yes,
or
yes,
know,
all that,
so
yeah. So it's bad, and the reason why it's bad is because our body is unique in itself. It's such an intrinsic thing. It's so powerful, what God has allowed the human body to do, that it does this thing where it's going to compensate. And so what happens is, even though you're getting those 3 hours of sleep or those 4 hours of sleep, and you've done this for 10 and 20 years. I've partied in the NFL. I've only slept 3 or 4 hours. I'm used to this. I can do this. What happens is the body's going to compensate for it. So you think that it's fine because you've only done this for the past 20 years. But when you sleep maybe 6 hours or 8 hours, initially you're going to be tired because your body now is like, wait, what is this? Like, that's not normal. And the body has gotten so used to being wrong and compensating for the lack thereof that when you give it what's right, you also have to now reteach the body what's right and what's normal. That's a real thing. And so we get people coming in literally saying they're sleeping 3 and 4 hours a night, and they think that they're functioning at optimal level. And then you adjust them. And that's a whole nother story of talking about, we talked about the sympathetics, but talking about the parasympathetics, rest and digest. Yes. And now you get these people to a place where they can literally get away. Just something so simple as talking. You may not have even dived deep. Just today you're saying, well, as the head of the household and once playing in the NFL and making millions of dollars, and I'm supporting my wife and child who has gotten used to this lifestyle, now I feel like I'm not enough. That one little thing that you can lay on a chiropractic table, talk about, get adjusted. Now you talked about the mental aspect, the emotional aspect, the physical aspect has been adjusted, and now you sleep 6 hours. And you feel tired and sluggish because you got 2 more hours of sleep. But after the body does this for 21 days, because now we're creating a habit, then the body realizes that I actually feel better than I felt before. I honestly don't have those negative thoughts in my head that I'm not enough for my wife or my child anymore, because it's a holistic thing. Not getting enough sleep is damaging to the brain. It literally is enough to shut a body down. It's enough where we've seen people go into, bipolar states or manic states when they're not bipolar, because they literally don't have enough sleep. So they go into a manic phase where they're running rampant because the brain no longer knows what to do.
That's so good.
And so the body just has gotten used to something that's inadequate and comped for the inadequacies. And that's why you're able to sleep for 4 hours when technically 4 hours of sleep is not enough. And if we test your heart, you probably would have the heart of a 60 or a 70-year-old at 30 years old.
Wow. Yeah. So what you're telling me is what we find as comfort is disguised as compensation.
Because he the good Lord has worked it out that way. It's oftentimes why we're giving 2 of things: 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs. Because if something stops working, think about it: 2 lungs, 2 kidneys. People can survive off of 1 because the body is always going to intrinsically heal itself to try to help, which is a whole nother conversation talking about why medication isn't always important, because the body is designated to intrinsically heal itself.
Yeah.
It's been designated to do that. That's why it's created. That's why if you cut your skin, if it's not deep, it causes a scab to form because it has the ability to heal itself. And that's a whole other conversation.
I'll say that's because I was something was gonna say, hey, so what you're telling me is if my mind, if I'm not getting enough sleep, and if my brain isn't optimal, then that impairs my ability to heal and recover. But we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna go there. And that is maybe that'll be part 2. But we got about 10 minutes left. I want to ask one more question real quick. Obviously, you have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to the people that we impact and we influence in regards to COVID, right? The COVID vaccine. I don't want to, you know, part of me wanted to say, okay, let's talk about COVID for our community, but I think there's enough out there that we know that it impacts our community the most. And some of that has to do what we talked about. So I don't want to open that up right now.
Right.
But what are your thoughts, or I would say maybe encouragement for those that are on the fences because of how the vaccines were used years ago, right? And how people are perceiving getting the vaccine now.
So that's a very touchy subject.
Very.
I have a personal opinion and I have a professional opinion. So my question becomes, are you wanting my professional opinion as Dr. Tip versus my personal opinion as Tiffany Hall? Because I have two different perspectives.
So I think it would be, I think we just have to kind of decide, do we want to talk about one now and one later? Because I don't want people to rush through this. I want them to really, so let's go with your professional opinion. I think we need to talk about professional opinion right now.
So my professional opinion as Dr. Tip is that individuals have to do what's best for them. What a vaccination may look like for someone like you and I, that we're healthy individuals, to someone, say, of my grandparents' age, or even a friend that may be my age that has underlying issues, is different. So I would say that someone that has that underlying issue, whether it be asthma or they're a smoker, or they're not in the best shape, because obesity is a disease in itself too. That's something that can kill you as well. So if we're talking about those things, I think that the vaccination would be on your side. Someone that's more healthy, if you had to put us all in a room and there were 20 vaccinations and there were 40 of us and 20 of us who are healthy and 20 of us weren't, I would say give the vaccinations to those 20 that aren't healthy versus the 20 of us that could possibly fight off things if, Lord forbid, we did come in contact with COVID. Our body just already has a stronger immune system. That's not to say that one of those 20 that are healthy can't still die. I'm not saying that. I'm also not pubbing that someone that's healthy should not get the vaccination, or that they shouldn't be allowed to get it if it came down to we only have 200,000 vaccinations. Who do we give it to? I'm just saying my professional opinion is that it should be administered, if it came down to it, to those that feel the desire to want to live past what they're already struggling with, because their body won't be able to fight off as quickly as ours would. So.
Awesome. And thank you for that. I think that is, as I mentioned, I know that a lot of people are looking to me for my, because they know I have a relationship with a ton of doctors. And I explained to them, all the doctors I have don't have the same opinion. All right.
That's true.
And they don't have, and there's not an agenda. Like the doctors that I do business with and I have relationships with, they're not driven by politics. They're not driven by color. They're not driven by none of that. Right. So whenever and that's the reason why I keep the relationship with them, is because they're going to keep it 100. And so I think that the way that you just basically explain it, I like the 20 and 20 and 20 in a room. I think that helps as well, bring a little clarity. And so I wanted to put that out there, because I know that we're getting to a point where the vaccinations are, rolling out, and a lot of people are getting them, a lot of people aren't. And so I wanted to definitely just kind of speak on that a little bit. And so before we close, I think that if you're up to it, I think we go with a part 2, because there's a lot more that I want to ask you. Because look, if y'all don't, most people know that I am a fan. I am an advocate of alignment. I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
My career of trying to pursue going to the NFL probably wouldn't have ended when it did, if I would have known more about the benefits of being adjusted. There's a lot of things that's like, and I'll give you a quick history on what happened before we close. So I would always get these groin pulls, both sides, right? And so and I was going to use the fancy term for what it was, but I'm not even gonna go there. So people are like, what is that?
Yes, for sure.
But it's the inner thigh. So some of us call it adductor or whatever we want to call it. But I'm just gonna say inner thigh for those that don't really know the anatomy like that. And so it took me a while to understand what the root was, right? So it came from my foot, Doc. It started at the foot.
Yes. Come
After
on,
doing
talk about it.
so I went to Cooper Institute. I went through a lot of different academies, got some education. So that's how I ended up in the industry originally. Ended up in the industry for a few reasons, but I was like, man, what is going on? And so it came from my foot.
Mhm.
And with my foot, for my height, I wear a 13 triple E. Well, I was
Mm.
wearing the wrong type of shoes
True.
all the time, right? So I'm trying to wear something that's light, something that's fancy. And what I didn't know was I was basically having, we can just call it consistent ankle sprains, and I
Mhm.
was functioning through plantar fasciitis, right?
Fasciitis.
So I didn't even know.
That's what I
Didn't
was
even
gonna hit
know.
on. That's
Didn't
what I
even
was gonna
know.
hit on.
In my
Yes.
mind, I was like, I was just taping my ankle,
Mhm.
right? And I was, trying to put on extra socks for my foot. I did not know what I didn't know. So it's
Yes. And
causing me,
it would have changed the entire
Doc.
dynamics. I'm telling you, literally, that's what we deal with now. I have athletes that come in and they're like, why are you treating my IT band? I'm telling you there's something. And I'm like, let me explain to you how the IT band is pulling on the knee. Your knee pain could be coming from your IT band. Okay, so yeah,
Mm,
your plantar fasciitis is flaring up, but we're going to work on these gastrocs and make sure that we're also working on Achilles tendon because it's a unit. You can't fix one thing. We just talked about it. What you don't know, you don't know. And it
and
literally can change the dynamics of someone's career,
yes,
knowing that it's not just your foot. It's not just a foot issue,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, and this is one of the reasons why I did not. I kind of turned down opportunities to work with particular places. Not going to name them because I said I would go in, and I'm going now knowing what I know. We're going to address the root. That
Mm,
means that the shoes that some of these athletes are wearing, they're not wearing no more. We're not
yep.
doing that. The warm-ups that are taking place is not going to be generic. There's some individual ish, and so
Yeah.
when I realized that wouldn't be accepted, I was like, I wouldn't be able to work somewhere and be able to go to sleep at night knowing that I know that this person is going to blow their ACL,
Yep.
and then what's going to happen is, even though they're treating the ACL in therapy, they're not looking at the compensation that's being made on the other side, which is going to lead to maybe an MC, like, right? And
Yes, that's
so,
it.
as I started to learn this stuff, I did some externships with Health South, and I'm working with, some doctors, and I'm just learning more about the body. I'm like, that's why I didn't make it. That's why I couldn't recover. My therapy could only get me to so far, but there were some rooted issues that needed to be aligned. And so
Hmm.
I just want to thank you for one, being a bold and very obedient sister in Christ that heard the word, heard the will of God, and followed that direction. Because I'm praying that there's some young girls of all colors that will
Yeah.
do more what you're doing, because there's not a lot. There's a what do you call it? A deficit of
Hmm.
women in your field, and I know for sure we need more women in your field and more women of color, because that's what's going to help bring more people to getting the type of medicine that we're talking about, the holistic medicine, the whole approach, so that they can have a golden alignment. Just did a little plug there. I don't know if y'all saw that, but yeah.
Yes.
So I want to close with that. Let people know how they can contact you, where you're located, and then hopefully we can do a part two if you're up to it, so we can kind of finish this
Yeah.
conversation, because I really want to help our communities understand that what you do is critical. And I love that you partner and you don't say, hey, I'm just going to write you a nutrition plan, I'm going to write you a program and do all that. You source it out, and that's what I
Yeah.
love.
I
It's
work in my own niche and we all have our
absolutely,
own niches and let us do it really well together. And we
absolutely.
can get, things done. So, Dr. Tip and Golden Alignment can be found on Instagram as well as Facebook at Golden Alignment, simple, GOLDENALIGNMENT. We also can be located on the website on the World Wide Web at www.thegoldenalignment.com. We also have office hours on Monday and Thursdays, and Saturday and Sundays. As I spoke earlier, Dr. Tip is still working in the hospital as well. So yeah, we work 7 days a week. If you need an appointment outside of those days and times, we do have appointments available, emergency appointments too, 911 appointments, midnight, no matter the day or time. You can locate us on web, and you can also book online as well.
Awesome.
So
Awesome,
yeah,
awesome, awesome. Well, hopefully again, this will be a part, part one of many parts. I think there's a lot more that I really want to uncover when it comes, especially when it comes to the brain and unlocking mental health and how the mind plays a large part of the body. And so, and I also want to talk a little bit more about the stuff that I mentioned of how I unlocked figuring out what was going on.
yes,
And you talked a little bit about that, how we start to make these things, we put band-aids on them and don't even know. And so
yeah,
medicine has come a long way, and I'm excited to be in this industry. And so we just want to thank you if you're watching this. When you watch this, if you have questions, you can contact her. That was her contact info. I'm on Instagram as TheFlyGuySly, Facebook Sylvester Stimley, and feel free to just shoot us a message and questions. We will be looking forward to doing a part two
right,
of this, so that we can be the change. This has gotta start now. We started the conversation, and so now I just want to move the needle forward a little bit more and just continue to help our people continue to live the best life that they can, that their bodies allows them.
right.
Our bodies can do so much. So thank you again. Have an awesome day,
Thank
Doc,
you.
and I appreciate you so much. And we will see you guys